We're going to unpack Kanye West's latest online, explosion, his rant that has everyone in the hip-hop world kind of buzzing right now. And we're going to be taking all this from a recent article in Hip Hop DX.
Kanye's not just ranting, though. It's interesting. He's name-dropping left and right, calling out some of the biggest names in the game.
Right. Yeah, so let's kind of rewind and set the scene. Playboi Carti, he's got this huge new album called Music, and he asked Kim Kardashian if North West, her daughter with Kanye, could contribute vocals to one of his tracks.
Yeah.
Seems pretty innocent, right?
Yeah, you'd think so, right? But this is Kanye we're talking about.
Right.
He and Kim are divorced, and he's, famously protective of his kids. And it gets even, more interesting or more spicy because Kanye claims that he was left off of Carti's album entirely.
Yeah.
And that seems to be the real trigger here.
Yeah. And when Kanye gets set off, everyone knows about it. He went on X, formerly Twitter, of course, and let loose with this huge rant that's making headlines everywhere. And he made it very clear North West is not going to be on this album. Right. He wrote, "I decided North won't be doing any songs with Carti. The man has the first and final say over his kids."
Yeah.
Pretty strong words.
Oh, yeah. He didn't stop there, though. He also said, "Nobody finna play with me," which, sounds like a pretty clear response to being excluded from the album. It's like he feels betrayed and sidelined, and he's not having it.
Yeah, it's really interesting, too, because it gets a lot deeper than that. He goes on to say that a lot of artists are controlled by a Jewish industry.
Mm-hmm.
And, that kind of echoes some of his past controversial statements. But the thing that, really stuck out to me was when he called out Kendrick Lamar. He challenged him to a rap battle. What?
Yeah, if you look at the bigger picture here, there's a lot more going on than just a simple feud. I think Kanye is grappling with a lot of, frustration with the music industry itself, with where he stands in the industry, and maybe even his own legacy.
Oh, so it's not just about Carti and North West, it's bigger.
Yeah, it's a lot bigger. This is the same Kanye who's, constantly challenged the status quo, disrupted the industry, pushed boundaries. He's never been afraid to speak his mind, even when it's controversial.
Yeah, and he's built his career on doing things his own way. So to be left out of this huge project by, someone he probably thinks of as a peer, it's got to sting a little bit.
It's a challenge to his own influence and relevance. You can almost hear the hurt pride in his words.
Right.
And the way he's calling out everybody from, Carti to Kendrick to this Jewish industry, it's like there's something deeper there, like a frustration and anger that goes way beyond this one incident.
So we've got Kanye, this rebellious figure. He's feeling pushed aside. He's lashing out. But there's some really specific people he's calling out here. Kendrick and Carti. Who else is on this list?
So it's a long list. He also called out Pusha T, Ty Dolla, Iggy Azalea, Virgil Abloh, Travis Scott, Kid Cudi Tyler, the creator Future, and Metro Boomin.
Wow, that is a lot of people. Is there any connection between all of them? What do they represent to Kanye?
Yeah, some of them are past collaborators. Some are, maybe perceived rivals. Some are people that he's praised in the past. It's almost like he's, casting a wide net. Anyone who he feels has wronged him, whether it was on purpose or not, they're getting called out.
So he's at war with the whole industry.
It kind of feels that way, yeah.
Kanye has always had this really complicated relationship with the music industry. He's obviously a product of it, but he's constantly pushing back against it.
Right.
He's achieved massive success. But he's also been so vocal about the problems with the power structure, the way artists are treated.
It's the Kanye paradox. He thrives within the system, while at the same time he's always trying to dismantle it. And it's when he feels like he's, losing control, like in this case, that's when we see these kind of explosive, outbursts.
So it's like this push and pull, right? He's this visionary artist, but also this savvy businessman. And those two sides, they don't always work together so well.
Yeah, and in this case, it's all playing out on this huge stage with the entire world watching and, breaking down every single word he says.
The thing that kind of struck me is that none of the artists he called out have responded to his rant, at least not according to this Hip Hop DX article. Why do you think that is?
That silence is really interesting, could be strategic. Maybe they don't want to add fuel to the fire or give Kanye any more attention than he's already getting. So,
starve the fire of oxygen.
Exactly. Or maybe they just don't want to engage with him on this level. Kanye has a history of making controversial statements, and maybe some artists are just choosing to distance themselves from that.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we've got this huge public, explosion from Kanye, fueled by this sense of betrayal and frustration. And then you've got all these artists, some of them huge names, just choosing to stay silent. Really interesting dynamic.
It really is. And I think it says a lot about how powerful social media is, how it amplifies these conflicts, but also how complicated it is to, handle fame and power in the digital age.
Yeah, this is a lot to unpack, and we're just getting started.
Oh, yeah, we're just scratching the surface here.
I think we've got a good foundation, though, for understanding what set Kanye off and, like, the bigger themes at play.
Social media, it's a double-edged sword, right, for artists like Kanye.
Yeah.
On the one hand, it gives them this huge platform to reach millions of people, but on the other hand, like every little rant, every feud, it just blows up instantly.
It's like a reality show that never ends.
Exactly. And for someone like Kanye who loves attention and, pushing the limits, social media is like his best friend and his worst enemy all at the same time.
Right. It gives him all the control. He bypasses all the, traditional media, and he gets to say exactly what he wants.
Right. He controls the whole narrative, and everyone else is just reacting to him.
So let's talk about those reactions, or the lack of reactions.
Yeah.
We were saying how most of the artists that he called out haven't said anything publicly, but Kendrick Lamar, that was a pretty big one, Kanye practically challenged him to a rap battle.
Yeah, that was a bold move for sure. And it's interesting for a few reasons. First of all, it shows that Kanye is aware of the tension that's already there between Kendrick Future and Metro Boomin, especially after that track I Hated Not Like Up that involved Drake too. It's like he's trying to tap into that energy, maybe even reignite a feud that had died down.
So it's not just a random challenge, it's like calculate. He's trying to insert himself into this bigger conversation.
Exactly. And remember, Kanye's done this before, pitting himself against other artists, even people that he admires. It's a way to get people talking and stir up controversy and ultimately stay relevant.
It's like he's saying, hey, I'm still here and I'm not afraid to make some noise.
And let's be honest, it works. People are talking about Kanye. They're analyzing his every word. They're debating his motives.
He's a master at getting attention, that's for sure. But, this whole rant, it reveals a lot about how Kanye sees the music industry. He's like part of it, but also fighting against it.
He's always been a disruptor. He challenges the status quo, he pushes boundaries, and he's not afraid to criticize the industry's power structure and, the way that artists get treated. But at the same time, he's had so much success within that same system.
It's like this constant push and pull, right? He's trying to find that balance between, artistic integrity and commercial success.
And that tension, that constant struggle, it's at the heart of so much of his music and his public image.
It makes you wonder, is he a victim of the industry that he helped create, or is he just playing a role manipulating the system to his advantage?
That's the big question, and I don't think there's an easy answer, but this rant, it definitely brings up some interesting questions about, power dynamics in the music industry and the impact that social media has on all of that.
It's a conversation worth having, but, Kanye's words, that they have consequences. He's not just, talking to himself. He's got millions of followers who listen to everything he says.
Absolutely, and some of those words, especially, his comments about a Jewish industry controlling artists, those are really problematic, and they can, reinforce harmful stereotypes.
Right, we can't ignore that. It's important to hold Kanye accountable for what he says and, understand the impact that his words can have, especially given his history.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even our idols, even the most talented people, they can have, really flawed and harmful beliefs.
So how do we reconcile his talent with his behavior? What will his legacy be?
I think it's still being written. This could be a turning point for him, a moment where he has to face his issues and make things right, or it could lead to more isolation and, the same patterns we've seen before.
It's hard to say, but it'd be interesting to see how the industry reacts, how his fans respond, and if Kanye himself, addresses the concerns that people have.
This whole situation, it shows how important it is to keep talking about these things, mental health accountability, the dangers of hate speech, and we need to challenge this idea that anyone is above criticism, even our, cultural icons.
This has been a wild deep dive.
Yeah.
We've explored, what triggered this whole thing, how intensely Kanye reacted, the politics of the music industry, and, the potential long-term impact of his words.
We also talked about how difficult it is to separate the art from the artist and how important it is to hold people accountable for what they do, especially when they have a big platform.
We covered a lot, but, this conversation isn't over. We want to leave you with this thought. What stands out to you about this situation? What questions do you still have?
Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and, keep having these important conversations. That's how we learn, that's how we grow, and ultimately that's how we make the world a better place.
It's really got me thinking, about Kanye's legacy after all this. Like, how will this whole rant and everything else that's happened, how will it affect how people remember him?
Oh, that's a big question. I mean, on the one hand, you can't deny his talent, his impact on music and culture. He's broken down barriers, he's redefined genres, he's inspired a ton of artists.
Yeah, he's a visionary, that's for sure.
Yep.
But then there's the other side of it, the unpredictable behavior, the controversial stuff he says, and how he's kind of pushed people away.
It's a complicated picture for sure, and it makes you wonder if we can even separate the art from the artist, the message from the person. Can we appreciate his work while also, condemning his actions and his words?
It's hard to ignore the impact of what he says, especially, when it hurts people, like those comments about a Jewish industry. That's really disturbing stuff.
Absolutely, you can't just brush that off. Those kinds of statements, they perpetuate harmful stereotypes, and they contribute to a culture of prejudice and discrimination.
It's a reminder that even our idols, the most talented people, they can have really messed up beliefs.
Yeah, and it's on us to hold them accountable, to challenge them and to make it clear that hate speech has no place in our society.
So how do we reconcile his talent with his behavior? What will his legacy be?
I think it's still unfolding. Maybe this latest outburst will be a wake-up call for him, a moment where he has to confront his issues and make things right. Or it could lead to, even more isolation and a repeat of the same patterns we've seen before.
Yeah, it's hard to predict, but I'm curious to see what happens, how the industry reacts, how his fans respond, and if Kanye himself addresses the concerns that people have raised.
I think this whole thing just highlights how important it is to have these conversations. We need to keep talking about mental health, about holding people accountable, about the dangers of hate speech, and we need to challenge this idea that anyone is above being criticized, even, cultural icons.
Well, this has been a crazy deep dive.
Yeah, for sure.
We've explored the whole situation, what set it off, how intense Kanye's reaction was, the music industry, the potential impact of his words. It's been a lot.
We also talked about how tough it is to separate the art from the artist and how important it is to, hold people accountable for what they say and do, especially when they have a huge audience.
We've covered a lot of ground, but this conversation is far from over. And we want to leave you with this, what stood out to you about all of this? What questions do you still have?
Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and, most importantly, keep having these important discussions. That's how we learn, how we grow, and that's how we make the world a better place.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.